Thank you for staying tuned. The prolonged scarcity of the Naira notes, both old and new, have continued to worsen the level of hardship in the country, which has grounded businesses and disposable income to a halt. The poor implementation strategy of the redesign of the Naira notes introduced by the central bank caused a crisis which has made daily operations difficult for many individuals and organizations, leading the nation's fragile economy to the brink of collapse, resulting in protests nationwide. However, the Naira crisis and the failure of banks to rise to the occasion have prompted customers to embrace mobile money platforms, which is translated into booming business for fintech as digital banking services became increasingly erratic, while transfers that were usually done in minutes are now taking days to deliver, as small, and medium enterprises in Nigeria are already facing the ripple effect of the new Naira redesign policy and cash crunch crisis of the Apex Bank. And joining me to look at this is an investment and economic analyst, Ayorinde Akinloye. Ayo, thank you so much for your time. It's good to have you on the show.
Thank you very much for having me on the show, Tolu. It's always a pleasure to be here to discuss, the economy with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Now you know that this is it's a developing story talking about this Naira redesign issue and all the development that have followed this issue. Now, speaking earlier to my first guest, I didn't want us to talk serious, stay on the issues around technology and, of course, all of these digital platforms being introduced by banks to help address some of those challenges. But in your understanding of the situation on ground, do you think that the banks have the capacity to handle this volume of transfers and transactions? There seems to be a lot of problems coming from that end. That is supposed to help address some of this challenges that we face at this time.
Well, I think basically it's quite obvious that the Nigerian banking system, most of the banks were pretty much unprepared for the significant surge that we have seen in digital transactions since the CBN implemented this policy. And it's not something that we can sort of nail the banks for, because the CBN probably did not prepare them properly for this. We even on a typical day when we have adequate cash in circulation, we know that we still typically would encounter issues sometimes, maybe once in maybe 5-6 transactions that you do, you would have some sort of issues in terms of bank network, and maybe you're trying to make a transfer, you're trying to make a bill payment, or you're trying to make payments with POS machines, which is probably the most common issue that we tend to face. And you still see that a lot of banks were still not even coping with the volume of transactions before the CBN redesigned the Naira and basically took all the old currency out of circulation. So the banks definitely were not fully prepared. Ideally, the CBN should have given adequate time. Yes, if we understand the fact that there might be a desire to pursue cashless policy and try to reduce the volume of transactions that are being done based on that are cash based in the Nigerian economy. Although if we begin to dig into data to sort of discuss that, we would actually find out that that is actually not correct in terms of the amount. When you compare Nigeria to so many other countries, the advanced economies, and even some of our peers within the emerging markets or emerging economy category, the volume of cash relative to our economic activities across the country is actually quite small when you do that comparison, but that is a different conversation. Yes, the CBN is trying to move towards a cashless policy as one of the reasons why they decided to redesign the Naira and reduce the volume of cash in circulation. If they were going to do that, and you are going to transit the entire economy to move towards digital payments, then you would need to give the banks adequate time for them to build their infrastructure, develop, in terms of hire more staff, more personnel. And like we know, the relocation wave has affected the technology, the engineering sector a lot in Nigeria in particular. And as a result of that, a lot of banks have lost some of their key technology staff, and that has led to reduction in the quality of service they offer on their various platforms. So it's definitely clear and obvious that the banking sector were not prepared for this. The CBN sort of just hung them out to dry, and they are really struggling now to cope with the volume of transactions they are getting on a daily basis, and it's reflecting in a lot of increased transaction failures via POS, via transfers, and I think there was a particular bank that for about 2 or 3 days you could not even log into your mobile bank application. So definitely banks are not well prepared, and they were not well prepared for this.
Now I want to follow up with this. There was this advice for the Apex Bank during all of this, before even the presidential election. And some say that if you want to make the online platforms attractive, why not do away or try to reduce the charges at the moment? If I'm buying something for 1,000 naira and I don't have the notes, now I have to pay via mobile app, and I'm paying an extra 20 or 30 naira on 1,000 naira. Obviously, I'm paying more than 1,000 naira for that service or for that goods. And I might just have 1,000 naira in my account. So clearly, I can't buy what I want to buy. So that was part of the advice, that we need to, reduce the charges. We need to also make sure the banks are ready to update their digital platforms and all of this. What do you make of that line of thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think the beyond just the charges, the first thing is the CBN, regardless of all the different advice they are giving the banks, the first thing is you need to give banks enough time to, strengthen their infrastructure in terms of their fintech infrastructure that aids, their payments system and things like that. You need to give them time to strengthen that, to commit investments into that, to ensure that the platforms of different banks are running efficiently. Then, so that was the first thing. So beyond just trying to reduce the fees to make it more attractive and all, if you reduce the fees, for example, we make transfers, the banks come out to announce and say transfers are free, or maybe you're paying just 5 naira to make transfers of any volume. It means the volume of transactions would increase, and it means the rate of failure of transactions would also increase. So beyond just reducing the charges, it's about efficiency of the platforms that consumers have to use to do these transactions. Now, there's a place for reducing transaction fee on these charges, on these transactions in terms of online transactions. But even POS transactions today are literally free. If I go to the supermarket and I buy something and I pay with my POS, I'm not charged anything for that POS transaction. I think maybe the merchants bears the cost of that transaction. I, as a consumer, would not bear any costs. But, so there are still some of these cheaper alternatives. It's about improving the efficiency of the systems. Yes, we can still go a step further to try to reduce the cost of implementing transfers. But I think the CBN, announced a bit of reform around that about a year or two ago, which has basically segmented transfer volume. So if you're transferring below 5,000 naira, I think you're paying just about 10 naira to make that transfer. If you're transferring above 5,000 naira, between 5,000 and a certain amount, I think you're paying about 26 naira. And then I think above 100 or 200,000 or a million thereabouts, you would be paying the full 100 naira. So that has sort of at least tried to reduce the cost of doing these transactions. Now it's about making it efficient enough in order to aid acceptance amongst consumers. And lastly, it's important to also mention that we basically can make cost of doing online transactions free, because there's an infrastructure that this funding supports. There are businesses that basically are built around trying to make this payment infrastructure work. You have the likes of NIBS, you have the likes of InterSwitch, you have the technology companies that build these applications, and you have the banks themselves who have to maintain these applications, pay the staff that manage these applications and things like that. So all this, there's a limit to how cheap online transactions can be, because there is an entire ecosystem that needs to be supported by the funds and the revenue that is generated from that.
But I want to ask you about the fintech companies, the operations in Nigeria. Despite all of those challenges, do you think they're faring well? Many believe that with this volume of transactions, we might need more and more of them to come in to take advantage of this space. If you notice, many bank customers are now shifting to some of these apps. Though I won't mention names, but you know what I'm talking about. And some are even saying, just let me get access to my money. I'm taking all my money and I'm taking it into all of this. So what are you making of all of this? Some even say the banks might lose at the end of the day looking at this, the impact of this policy.
Yes, so I think yes, in the past say 1 month, I've actually seen, even from personal interactions with colleagues and friends and all, I've observed that a lot of them are moving from traditional banks to actually opening accounts with some of the more digital banks. Like you said that you don't want to mention names, but we've seen a lot of drive to move towards that. I mean, I've done that quite a while ago. I mean, when I noticed the improved efficiency on those platforms, on the fintech platforms compared to the traditional banks, I actually made that move, quite a while ago. And I've seen quite a lot of people take that decision now. But the reason why a lot of the fintech companies are not struggling with efficiency, which is actually the truth, they are not actually struggling with efficiency. I've been able to make online transactions smoothly all through this period using the bank I have an account with in terms of the fintech app, and I've not had any serious issues. But the reason why they are not facing significant issues is they have a smaller customer base to service. So unlike some of the traditional banks that have customer sizes, they have about 20 million accounts, they have 15 million accounts, 10 million accounts. Some of these fintech companies probably have just 1 million accounts, of which maybe less than 10, 20, 30% of them are doing active transactions on a daily basis compared to traditional banks that have to support a larger customer base. So it's actually been easy. It's been easy for transactions to go through on these fintech platforms, and that's why we're seeing a lot of people move towards these applications. Now, do we need more of them? I think we have enough fintechs and digital banks around the country today. It's about scaling up, improving service delivery, improving service quality, and also driving penetration. I took a stroll to Wimbo Market, in Lagos State a few days ago, just to look at how people are making payments for transactions in terms of buying things in the market and all. And something just came, and I noticed that, why can't the likes of these fintechs flood these major markets, Wimbo Market, Idumota, and all the likes, and basically enable a lot of these traders to be able to actually receive payments using POS. Because I saw so many of them were just seated there, no sales, because people didn't have cash to pay, and they didn't want to collect transfers, either because they didn't have bank accounts, or they were concerned about the cost of withdrawing the money from POS operators who are charging roughly about 20% to give you money today. So, a lot of these fintech companies, we have a lot of them already. What they need to do now is to penetrate the market. Go flood the likes of the Imbo market, the Idumota, Maitu market, these food markets, the cloth markets and the likes, and enable these traders, teach them how to operate a POS machine such that it's easier for them to get payments directly into their bank accounts. And that would support the drive. When you're using a lot of these new generation POS machines, actually the rate of transaction failures is actually much smaller than some of the older generation POS terminals. So when you use the new generation ones that are being deployed by a lot of these fintech companies, I don't want to mention names, but because I've had to deal with business owners, and I've seen how these POS machines actually work, because the rate of transaction failures are actually much lower compared to some of the older ones that we used to use. So if we're able to deploy this across markets, the fintech companies driving this, being at the forefront of this, pushing this and taking advantage of this policy to sort of improve their market penetration, then that would at least go a long way to reduce the gap, help drive CBN's cashless policy, and in the long haul, maybe we would not need as much cash as we used to, as we needed to run the economy, like we needed before. So that's basically where we are at this point. We have quite a lot of fintechs already. What they need to do is to invest in service delivery, invest in market penetration, and educating, the unbanked, and actually going after the so-called target market that a lot of these fintechs, claim they started up for.
Beautiful stuff there. I must thank you so much, Mr. Ayorinde Akinloye there. This is a developing story and we're staying on it. So, of course, we'll get different angles to analyzing what this means. But one thing I know you would also agree with me, the negative impact of this policy on Nigerians at the moment is what it's not looking too very good with what we see out there. I must thank you so much for your time, economic and investment analyst, and do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much for having me. It's always a pleasure.